And for more on the implications of the presidential pardon, let's speak with Karen Hult, Professor of Political Science at Virginia Tech. Professor Hult, thank you very much for joining us. So how damaging exactly is this pardon for trust in the U.S. justice system and also the Department of Justice? I mean, it would suggest now that both Biden and Trump feel the department is politicized and weaponized, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. In addition to many people being surprised and disappointed that President Biden evidently broke a promise that he made that he would not issue a pardon or any kind of clemency to his son Hunter, it does indeed highlight the concern that both Mr. Trump and incoming President-elect Mr. Trump and outgoing President Biden have real concerns about the ways in which the Justice Department has been manipulated, apparently, in order to seem to be attacking political opponents. That is a real concern for a whole range of people that, as you say, really are questioning the legitimacy of the Justice Department itself, especially when one has a pretty controversial person going in as Attorney General nominee and an FBI nominee that many people have questions about as well. It really does undercut the Democrats' efforts to say the Justice Department is important and needs to be protected.
Okay, so Joe Biden repeatedly said he would not pardon his son. What do you think? Was that a lie from the beginning, or did things change? Did he become convinced over time that Hunter was singled out politically?
Probably a mixture of both of them. I don't think that it was consciously a lie, but I do think over time, especially as the campaign developed and the aftermath of the campaign continued with President Biden and President Trump and those around him saying, we are certainly going to exercise revenge of various kinds against what we perceive as opponents to us and the Trump administration coming into office. Given that may well have changed President Biden's calculus in terms of what he would do in order to try to protect his son, not only from going to jail, which could have happened today in the sentencing, but also what could have happened to him if they had gone back in time to the end of the Obama administration, in which there were people saying that justice could come back and charge Mr. Hunter Biden again with other kinds of charges. I think both of those things combined to persuade Mr. Biden as a father that he needed to do something to protect his son.
Professor Hult, I mean, all presidents, or at least those in recent history, issue pardons. So how is this one different compared to all previous pardons? I mean, Biden, we know, has actually issued fewer pardons than most, and Trump himself, we know, has pardoned some questionable names like Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort.
Yes, and more recently as well, his son-in-law Jared's father was pardoned, and now that person has been nominated as ambassador to France. So all presidents, as you say, do issue pardons and can issue pardons. This pardon is distinctive in a couple of ways. One is it's extremely broad in its framing. Most legal experts are saying that they've not seen a pardon statement that's quite as broad as this one since the statement that Gerald Ford issued to pardon Richard Nixon. So the breadth of the statement and the sweep of the efforts really stand out. Moreover, unlike many other pardons, what Mr. Biden did was not wait until after Hunter Biden served time or paid penalties for his crimes. Instead, he was convicted by 2 federal juries, but has never been formally penalized for those crimes. And so those 2 things probably make it stand out. Moreover, though some presidents have pardoned family members, this is probably the closest family member that's ever been involved in a presidential pardon.
And now President Biden is facing criticism from both sides of the aisle. Professor, what impact is the pardon going to have on his legacy, his reputation? Is this move going to overshadow his political accomplishments as he leaves office?
Well, certainly it will overshadow them in the shorter run. And in the longer run, it will not help his longer term legacy in terms of many people would argue that he did many things and accomplished quite a lot in his short term as president. This, on the other hand, undermines many of those accomplishments and puts into place a prism and a highlight on many of the concerns about the politicization that both parties have been undertaking over the last 20 or 30 years.
Professor Hult, what does this all mean for Trump's nomination for the FBI director role, Kash Patel? I mean, does it actually help make Trump's case that Patel is the right man, for the job to, I don't know, overhaul, dismantle the FBI, for example?
It could be. I mean, certainly that will be part of the argument. Certainly, Senate Democrats are quite unhappy with the pardon for exactly that reason. They believe that what President Biden did, perhaps inadvertently, was to undermine the case they've been trying to make about the need for someone responsible to come into both heading the FBI and, at least as importantly, heading the Department of Justice. Both of those things now pale in the context of Mr. Biden issuing this broad and sweeping pardon. So I think it places both of those nominations in a light that may make many Democrats unsure about the extent to which they will be able to credibly threaten or argue against those nominations in ways that they thought they were in pretty good shape going into today. That went away last night.
So Donald Trump has responded and, among other things, has said that this was abuse. He says he will fix the justice system. What's next then, Professor? Is there any way this pardon could be rescinded, for instance?
No way at all. This is an absolutely illegal use of the pardon power. It's there in Article 2 of the Constitution, and there is no other way for this pardon to be reversed or otherwise changed. Probably the bigger picture is what we've already talked about. That is, it will taint some of President Biden's legacy. It also may well undermine some of the efforts that Democrats will try to make, and some Senate Republicans will make, to raise questions about the Attorney General nominee and certainly the nominees for the FBI as well.
Professor Hult, it's been about 24 hours since Joe Biden made this announcement. It's been talked about. You mentioned the difficulty for the Democrats as well as they try to rehabilitate or restore the trust in the justice system. But I'm actually really wondering, does Donald Trump actually need a reason to do what he does, or a precedent in any way, for what he's going to be doing for his second term at all?
Well, there are lots of precedent. I mean, he certainly can say, "I was elected by the public," and that's a powerful argument. I think the claim of a mandate is vastly overstated, but we can talk about that as a separate issue. But certainly, Donald Trump is in the position of saying, "I've been elected president." Both chambers of Congress are members of the Republican Party. And so what we can do then is to say we've got a sense of what needs to be done to what they would argue is righting the ship of state in the United States. That will be among the strongest arguments he will make for his Senate and cabinet nominees, and also for what he will say on the first day in office, in which he will issue perhaps a variety of kinds of statements having to do with immigration, with a whole range of other issues, executive orders, and so forth. So he certainly is in a position to do those things. Nonetheless, there are serious concerns about some of his cabinet nominations, including those that are coming out most recently about the defense secretary designate.
Only about 48 days until Mr. Trump is inaugurated. Thank you so much for your insights today, Professor. Karen Hult, Professor of Political Science at Virginia Tech.